Imagine being the smelliest human on earth. Not just a little smelly, not gym bag smelly, not forgot to shower for a week smelly. We are talking about a smell so powerful that birds fall out of trees. A smell so ancient and layered and deeply committed to being a smell that it had its own ecosystem. A smell that had probably been developing since before this particular caveman could walk. And the best part? He had absolutely no idea. Meet Grug. Grug was a regular caveman living approximately 200,000 years ago in what would one day be called Africa. He woke up every morning on a pile of leaves. He ate whatever he could find. He ran from things that wanted to eat him. He slept. He woke up. He did it again. By all caveman standards, Grug was doing fine. He had survived 17 winters. He knew which berries would kill you and which ones would not. He could track a deer for 3 days without losing the trail. He was, by every measure that mattered in the Stone Age, a successful human being. There was just one problem. Grug smelled like 8 years of dead fish wrapped in wet animal skin and left in the sun. But here's the thing about smelling that bad. When you have never smelled anything different, you do not know. You genuinely, completely, 100% do not know. To Grug, Grug smelled exactly like everything else smelled. Like the world. Like life. Normal. Except the birds. Every time Grug walked under a tree, the birds in that tree made a decision. A very fast, very unanimous decision. They left. All of them. At once. Grug had noticed this, but had developed his own theory about it. He believed he had a gift. A power over birds. He was wrong. But he was confident, which in the Stone Age was almost as useful as being right. The wolves were harder to explain. Wolves in this part of the world were bold. They had been known to approach human campsites, to follow hunting parties, to test the edges of what they could get away with. They were opportunistic and brave. But not around Grug. When Grug walked past, wolves sat down. They looked in the opposite direction. They found something very interesting to examine on the ground that was not Grug. One particularly large wolf had actually walked directly into a bush to avoid crossing Grug's path and had stayed there for 20 minutes until Grug was gone. The wolves had made a calculation. Whatever Grug was, it was not worth investigating. But the real problem, the problem that was becoming impossible to ignore, was the tribe. Grug's tribe had approximately 30 members. They moved together, they shared food, they protected each other. They sat around fires together at night telling stories and making the kinds of sounds that would one day become language. Except, they did not sit next to Grug. At first it was subtle. Someone would sit down near Grug and then remember something important on the other side of the fire. Someone would offer Grug food from a safe distance, arm fully extended, face turned slightly away. The tribe's best hunter, a woman named Oka, who feared nothing, had once accidentally sat downwind of Grug and had immediately stood up, looked at the sky as if checking for rain, and walked briskly in the opposite direction. Grug had noticed all of this. He had developed a theory about that too. He believed the tribe was in awe of him. He was, again, wrong. The flies knew the truth. Flies had found Grug approximately 6 years ago and had never left. They traveled with him everywhere. A personal cloud of buzzing admiration that followed him through forests and across plains and into every situation he encountered. Grug had so many flies following him that other members of the tribe used him as a landmark. Turn left at the buzzing. You will know when you are close. And then there were the mosquitoes. If the flies were Grug's constant companions, the mosquitoes were his enthusiastic party guests. Every evening they arrived in numbers that could only be described as enthusiastic. They had preferences. They had loyalty. Some of them had clearly been following Grug for so long they had become a kind of extended family. Grug scratched constantly. He had scratched so much and for so long that scratching had become a kind of hobby. He did it while eating. He did it while sleeping. He once scratched through an entire mammoth hunt without realizing he was doing it. He thought the itching was normal. It was not normal. But then came the incident with the mammoth. The tribe had been tracking a young mammoth for 2 days. They had a plan. Oka and 3 others would come from the east. 2 more would circle from the west. And Grug, because he was strong, and also because nobody wanted to stand too close to him for extended periods, would approach from directly downwind. This was supposed to be the dangerous position, the position where the mammoth would most likely charge. The mammoth did not charge. The mammoth smelled Grug coming from 400 meters away. It made a sound that no mammoth had ever made before in the long history of mammoths making sounds. It turned around. It walked in the other direction at a pace that suggested it had somewhere important to be. And then it began to run. A fully grown mammoth. Running away. From a smell. Grug stood there, watching it go. He turned to the nearest tribe member. He pointed at himself. He made a sound that meant something like, "Look how scary I am." The tribe member covered their nose and nodded very quickly and took 3 steps backward. Grug interpreted this as respect. Things got worse. Because next came the saber-tooth tiger. The saber-tooth tiger was the most dangerous animal in the region. It had killed 3 members of the tribe in the past 2 years. It was enormous. It was fast. It was absolutely merciless. And one afternoon, it found Grug alone at the edge of the forest. The tiger crouched. It began to move forward through the grass in the slow, deliberate way that tigers move when they are very serious about what is about to happen. Grug froze. The tiger got closer and closer, and then the wind shifted. The tiger stopped. It lifted its head. It sniffed. And then something happened that had never happened in the long and violent history of this particular tiger. It stepped backward. Then it turned around. It walked away with the careful dignity of an animal pretending that none of that had just occurred. Grug watched it go. He looked up at the sky. He was, he decided, definitely cursed. Except that he was not dead, which confused him, because the curse kept saving his life. Meanwhile, Grug had been trying to solve the problem. He did not know what the problem was exactly, but he knew something was wrong. He could tell from the way the tribe looked at him, from the way animals behaved, from some deep animal instinct that told him something about his situation needed to change. He just had no idea what. So he experimented. First he tried mud. He had seen other animals roll in mud. Pigs seemed to enjoy it. He found a good mud patch and rolled in it enthusiastically. He covered himself completely. He stood up feeling quite pleased. The flies investigated the new surface and adapted immediately. The mud did not help. Then he tried leaves. He gathered large leaves and pressed them against his body. Green ones, fresh ones, ones that smelled like plants. He covered himself from head to foot and walked back into camp looking like a bush that had learned to walk. The tribe stared at him. The flies hovered patiently around the leaves. The leaves did not help. Then he tried flowers. There was a field of wildflowers nearby, and Grug spent an entire afternoon pressing them against his skin and weaving them into his hair. He arrived back at camp smelling like flowers and also like himself, which created a combination that one tribe member would later describe in grunts as somehow worse. The flowers did not help. Then he tried smoke. He stood in the smoke from the cooking fire for so long that his eyes watered and he could not see. The tribe moved the fire. Grug found the fire and stood in the smoke again. The tribe moved the fire again. This went on for some time. The smoke did not help. And then came the bee. It was not a remarkable bee. It was an ordinary bee, doing ordinary bee things in an ordinary meadow. But Grug walked through that meadow and disturbed it. And the bee, offended, decided to follow him. Then a second bee joined. Then several more. Grug walked faster. The bees kept pace. Grug began to run. The bees accelerated. Grug ran through the trees and across the open ground and through a thicket of bushes that scratched him, and he did not notice because he was running from bees. He ran up a hill. He ran across the top of the hill. He ran toward the edge of the hill. He ran off the edge of the hill. For one brief moment, Grug was flying. Then he was not. The river was cold. Very cold. Cold in a way that reached every part of him instantly. He went under and came back up and grabbed a rock and held on. The current pushed around him. The water was clear. He could see the bottom. He could see his own hands looking strange and clean against the rocks. He waited for whatever was going to happen next. Nothing happened. He waited longer. A fish swam past. It did not swim away from him. It swam past him with the casual indifference of a fish that had not noticed anything unusual. Grug stayed very still. A bird landed on a rock 3 meters away. It looked at him. It did not fly away. Grug looked at the bird. The bird looked at Grug. This had never happened before. In Grug's entire life, birds had always left when he arrived. He had built his whole identity around this. But this bird stayed. And then Grug noticed something else. The buzzing had stopped. He turned his head slowly. He looked around. He looked above him. He looked to both sides. No flies. No mosquitoes. Just the sound of water and the wind in the trees and a bird sitting on a rock watching him with mild interest. Grug looked at his arms. He looked at his hands. He smelled his own hands for probably the first time in his life, and the smell was not what he expected. It was not bad. It was cold and clean and like the river and nothing else. He did not understand what had happened. But something had happened. He stayed in the river for a long time. When he walked back into camp that evening, something was different. He could tell from the way the tribe looked at him. Not the usual look. Not the careful look. Not the look that said, "I have just remembered something important on the other side of the fire." Oka sat down next to him. Not close, but closer than before. Nobody said anything, but nobody moved away either. The next morning, Grug went back to the river. And the morning after that, the tribe thought he had lost his mind. Grug did not care. Something about the water felt necessary now, like eating, like sleeping. He could not explain it. He just knew that the day was better after the river than before it. The itching slowed down. The bug bites faded. The flies still came, but much later. Soon the tribe noticed something strange. Grug scratched less, smelled better, and animals no longer avoided him as much. Nobody called it bathing, they didn't even have a word for it. But one by one, everyone started visiting the river each morning, always alone, pretending it meant nothing. If you had asked why, they couldn't explain. They just knew it felt right. No one invented bathing. No one planned it or celebrated it. It began by pure accident when one terrified caveman jumped into a river to escape a bee. Thousands of years later, every shower you take follows that same forgotten discovery. That feeling of being clean, refreshed, and ready for a new day traces back to one unexpected moment in prehistory. We'll never know who the real Grug was, but whoever first realized that water made life better had no idea they were changing human history. They only noticed one thing: the birds didn't fly away anymore. And that was enough.